On a sunny day, the school buzzed with unusual fuss among students. The final results of the third years are out. Saito stunned everyone by his hat trick on the first spot again. He walked by, ignoring them. Their gazes followed him in admiration. Instead of giving a damn about their gossip behind his back, he minded his own business, and thought it's better to study rather than gossiping about other people's scores. Drowned in his thoughts, Saito noticed a girl approaching closer to him with intense rage, which drenched him in sweat and fear. The girl looked at him with a sharp gaze, accompanied by a burning rage, sending shivers down in his spine. The angry girl made direct eye contact and pulled him by his necktie, covering him with sweat and fear. After a little moment, tears streamed from Akane's eyes. She said in frustration, "You haven't studied at all, then why I'm in second and you in first place again?" And shocked him in anger to let her frustration out on him. Somehow Saito made her let go of him and coughed to breathe. He replied in anger, "Just doing homework is enough. And can't you skim an entire book by going through it?" Listening to him, Akane replied, "It's impossible for humans." Hearing her, Saito replied, "It worked for him." Though he had no complaint about her face as he found her pretty like a professional model, but there's a catch. Finding her distracted, Saito slammed open the classroom door and dashed to escape from Akane. But she didn't give up and chased him, by slamming her hands on his desk, saying in anger, "Hold it," making him shocked as he asked, "For what reason?" Akane anger peaked. She shouted, "You wrote something dirty about me in your diary again and went home, didn't you?" Leaving him scared and everyone stunned in class by her revelation. Like a boss, she asked, "Why didn't you write anything in your particular and in your curriculum section?" Saito replied there were no changes in it. But the angry chibi pressed forward and asked, "Why haven't you erased chalkboard?" Saito sighed and said no one gives a damn about it. Little later he sighed. After Akane finished talking with him, his face made it clear, as he said in an irritated tone that she is a pain in the ass, making her so furious that she slammed her hands on his desk like a gorilla, saying that she is doing this for him. But Saito replied, "No thanks, I'm good the way I am." Thinking about her continuous actions towards himself, he wondered why she only targets me. It isn't that I'm incompetent. He remembered about the start of his first date till now, that every single day is like hell for him due to Akane. And anyone would be tired out after meeting with a girl like her. Before she pout like a Pikachu in anger, Hamari immediately grabbed her from behind, asking her to let him off the hook this time or he would cry. Letting her go, Hamari asked, "Why do you always fight Saito?" Hearing her, Akane lost in her thoughts wider than the universe, to find a reason why she fights with him every day. Without knowing any reason, she expressed, "Just looking at his face wants me to beat him up with my slipper," as she thinks him nothing more but a cockroach to be killed by her. Looking at them, Shisei moved closer and asked, "Are you guys fighting with his brother again?" Saito explained that Akane is bullying him. Listening to him, Shisei patted his head like a big sister and encouraged him by sympathizing with him. Watching how she's acting towards Saito, Hamari asked, "Aren't you interested in him?" Akane and Saito's jaw dropped in surprise by her guess. After hearing her, Akane declared in a rage that she wouldn't consider Saito her type, even if he were the last man on earth. Saito replied, "That's my line and I would do the same if Akane were the last girl on earth." The drama between rivals continued, leading to a staring competition to see who would back off first. At the same time, both of them looked away in frustration, making everyone surprised by their actions. Hamari and Shisei witnessed the fight in the front row with snacks between the rivals. Lastly, the school was over. Saito sighed in exasperation after being free from Akane. Suddenly his phone rang and it was from his grandfather. He answered, and his grandpa wished to spend time with him. Saito respectfully declined, saying he had a book to read. His old man replied, "You can do that later. And as a successor of his company, won't you regret not making time for him?" Saito sighed and said in a depressed tone, "Long live my dear old man, you won't die that easily." His grandpa replied, "Now don't be so cold towards him," and laughed, by replying, "All right, you got me, and if you are really that smart then you know what it means to refuse." Suddenly a limousine made an entrance and stopped close to him. Two cartoonish goons stepped out and threatened him to come with them or else. Saito had no choice but to cooperate. He walked and sat into the limo, with both two goons, who were serving him now. The driver apologized for picking him up in this style. After reaching one of the traditional inns, his jaw dropped. He hadn't expected Akane there. Looking at him, she asked in shock, "Why are you here?" After discovering his reason for coming here, Akane sighed and expressed in irritated tone, "What a horrible coincidence, I came to enjoy a meal with my grandma." Finishing his conversation with her, Saito replied, "Don't disturb me when I'm reading," which made her so furious that she slapped her hand like a gorilla, saying, "Don't think of me as an attention seeker." Saito replied, "I didn't, so please shut up," which burned her in rage. She moved closer saying, "I hate this attitude of yours and I won't stop until you apologize." His anger peaked. He looked and asked her in exasperation, "Do you plan to harass me until I apologize? You're too damn annoying." Listening to him, Akane replied, "So are you." Before things grew worse among them, they heard a car horn, and it was his old man coming out of the car, holding an old lady's hand like his girlfriend, laughing heartily with her as he watched how they were acting. They were shocked by watching their grandparents together. They looked at each other in confusion, thinking, "What's going on here?" Saito's grandfather removed his glasses and said, "You two get in. How long do you two plan there to stand like a statue?" Making both of them confused by thinking, "Both of us together, right?" Inside the traditional inn, the old folks laughed, enjoying their fullest for this momentous day. On the other hand, Saito and Akane were in shock, sulking their juices to hide their confusion and anger. During his drink, he looked at the door, guarded by the cartoonish goons, and thought they were in his way of escape. Akane ordered another drink. Saito looked at her and asked, "You are doing nothing but drinking juice since you came." She replied, "I lost my appetite because of you." He expressed, "What a coincidence, me too." She laughed and requested, "Would you mind perishing for her?" Saito also laughed and replied, "Would you please vaporize first?" Looking at both of them, the old man laughed and cheerfully expressed that you two seemed quite close to each other. In confusion, they asked how. Saito looked at his old man and asked, "So why did you call both of us here? And what was that urgent conversation that you wished to have with us?" The old folks looked at each other, nodding their heads in agreement. They looked at their grandchildren with a smile and said, "Please marry each other." Saito and Akane jaw dropped in surprise, making them lose their appetite as their food dropped from their hand, making them think, "What the hell?" He looked at his grandpa and said, "Maybe I might have heard something wrong. Is it a Morse code or a cipher?" His grandfather said, "I meant what I said, please get married." Akane looked at her grandma and asked, "What do you mean by marriage? We are only high schoolers." Her grandmother cheerfully replied, 18 is the official age of marriage. Now please get married." The old folks smiled, thinking about their past, kicking their flashback story about their youth as how they always miss the mark, resulting in an untied love knot with each other, and walking off on their separate paths. Saito old man looked up and said, "I married another woman and made her happy, but now it's a decade since she passed away." Akane grandmother blushed and expressed a similar experience, making Saito and Akane heartache by looking at the unfolding romance between the old folks. Looking at their young ones with a sinister smile, they expressed, "We wished our grandchildren to fulfill our desire by being married and experiencing the feelings that they wish to realize in their youth." Suddenly Akane grandma looked at her with a sharp gaze and a menacing aura, ordering her to get married for her happiness, making a shiver run through her granddaughter's spine by her unexpected request. Hearing her, Akane burst out emotionally and declined her request by replying that she would marry a man who she truly loves. Ending her conversation in an emotionally trembling voice, she said, "It's not something they should decide on their own for her." Looking at how bravely she resisted, Saito looked at his grandfather and declined his request by replying, "In Japan you can't force someone to marry against their will." Hearing their answer, the old folks laughed, confusing Akane and Saito and thinking, "What's so funny, huh?" Saito old man sighed and replied, "We expected this outcome and we were prepared for it." Suddenly he clapped his hands, signaling his men. On his signal the man brought a snotty dog into the room. The old man said, "Saito, if you won't do what I said, then the company is going to be succeeded by this worthy snotty dog." In anger and confusion Saito asked about the dog. The old man replied he picked the dog for this purpose and work, though he also had reservations, after all it's a dog. The old man explained this dog can sign paperwork with its thumb seals, and thumb seals are legal in Japan without a problem. Saito anger peaked. He burst and said before worrying about thumb seals, "I don't think this dog can even write its name." The old man crushed lobster in his hand and expressed with a smile, "Exactly, if I did then the Hanju group would be over after his death." and taunted his grandson by saying, "Oh, you wanted to take over the company, too bad you can't." Saito said in anger, "Have you gone nuts?" Emitting a sinister aura with a smile, the old man replied, "Doesn't it take a madman to run a company?" Striking fear in the hearts of the young ones, with his words. Akane's grandmother signaled her to come closer. After moving closer, her grandma whispered something in her ear, making her tremble in fear. The old folks mischievously laughed, hinting at their anticipation regarding their upcoming decision. Cherry on the cake, the old man gave them 3 days to become lovey-dovey couple or prepare for something worse. Saito trembled in fear, thinking that 3 days are too soon to ship in with Akane. Akane became flustered and muttered, "Even if you say that, but is a happy ending possible between them who are like water and oil against each other?" Just thinking about this possibility, Akane couldn't control her emotional turmoil, and burst out in anger, saying there's absolutely no way she would marry a guy like him, making him stunned out in fear, by thinking that his future is already over before it even started. After that, the last thing Saito remembered was Akane acting lovey-dovey all of a sudden, and she called him closer to be embraced in her arms. He moved closer to her. But suddenly everything shifted. As he found himself in the palm of a giant Akane, she boomed in rage and menace, making him scream like a scaredy cat. Saito woke up screaming from this nightmare. His face became fretful as he realized this nightmare is going to haunt him every day. The reason was clear for this nightmarish reality, because of his grandfather's foolish wish. Getting ready for school, Saito pondered the vicious cycle that he is trapped in. He wanted to take over his old man's company, but not like this. Suddenly a chill ran down his spine, thinking about his life partner is going to be none other than Akane, a devil from hell. Saito drenched in sweat, thinking about his horrifying future, about going insane after enduring the same torture at home from her. With a firm resolve, Saito swore that he won't let this marriage happen, and went to school, beginning the first day of his fate set by old man. He slammed open the door and his eyes made contact with Akane. Saito tried to reach closer to her, but she looked away and went out from there. Catching an unexpected glimpse of his big bro actions, Shisei asked in surprise, "Did you just try to talk with her?" Saito immediately left in haste, dodging her question, and went out to search for Akane, finding her once again. He tried to reach closer to her, but she felt worried by his actions and left from there. Calling her from behind, he asked back then, "What your grandma whisper in your ear?" She lunged back in anger and said, "It has nothing to do with you." Saito persuades her to tell him, or otherwise, they have to accept these unfair marriage. Akane anger peaked. She shouted, "That's not necessary," and to stop crying in her heart, running away from there. Hearing her, Saito remarked in frustration, "Very well, I don't think that we can cooperate with each other." On the second day in class, thinking about his future, Saito thought how he can make Akane collaborate with him. Suddenly he felt a chill ran down his spine by Shisei continuously stared at him in silence. With her unflinching gaze, she muttered that something is definitely wrong with you, big bro. Finally, the school was over. Saito went back at class to pick up the things that he had forgotten in stress. After finding it, he was about to leave. Suddenly Himari slammed open the class door and apologized to Akane for not calling her yesterday. Saito became surprised and immediately hid away, to calm himself down in the unexpected situation that he is in. Instantly he felt that his hand touched something soft and warm. Unaware of the surprise that he is about to get, he turned around and became stunned. After watching Shisei with him, in a playful tone she replied, "Peekaboo, you are busted, big bro." She clings closer to him and asks, "Do you want to play brother?" Making him see a ghost out of him in fear, he asks, "What the hell are you doing here?" Being alone with Himari, Akane asked, "What you would do if your family forced you to marry someone you don't like, for example?" Himari answered, "I would turn him down." Saito cheered up by hearing their discussion, and she further expressed in a cheerful tone, "There is someone I like." Akane asked in disbelief, "You have a crush on someone?" She covered her face with her hands in shyness and said, "Please keep it a secret." Being flustered, Himari changed the subject and asked Akane, "Do you have someone that you like?" In thinking, she once again lost in her thought universe to search for someone that she liked. After her long silence, Himari concluded she is still single from the beginning, and cheerfully suggested to Akane why not to take the offer, as it would be more convenient for her problems. Hearing her answer, Akane muttered, even though it's a forced marriage, but she still had to go from the coupling process, right? Akane's voice became lower and lower. She muttered about her future. Making herself inaudible by Himari, she asked in confusion, "What are you muttering about?" After a moment of silence, Akane burst in embarrassment and said she is inexperienced in the erotic stuff that couples do with each other. Hearing her, Saito's body shook from bottom to top, leaving him flustered by her concern. After hearing her words, Shisei decided to go home, finishing her play, which creeped him out with her decision. Saito moved closer and hugged Shisei, urging her to stay, warning her that if she left now, Akane would surely go insane after seeing them. Listening to her concern, Himari replied, "That's true," Akane expressed in frustration. "I know, right?" Continuing her conversation, Himari replied, "If you are getting married, won't the family expect children from you? And I think approximately 100 babies would be enough." Picturing 100 mini Saitos, Akane burst out in flusteredness, saying it's impossible for her. Himari teased her and suggested, "If you produced 10 at once, then you can achieve that target." Akane trembled in fear and said that's impossible for her, she is not that strong. During their conversation, Himari asked, "Oh, are we talking about you?" Making her go crazy all of a sudden, Akane replied in a quivering tone, "It's an example, not about me." Himari tilted her head and asked cheerfully, "Oh, it's just an example, huh? So, suppose it happened to you in real life, then what?" To help her best friend, she brought a romance magazine to teach her about love tactics. Akane felt overwhelmed on her wits' end. She created a tantrum and ruckus like a baby, saying, "I don't need this stuff," and suddenly ran away like a ninja by shouting, "I won't get married," making Himari think what's up with her all of a sudden. As things became silent suddenly, Saito sighed and said, "Did they leave?" For a moment Saito got covered up with sweat. By watching it, Shisei questioned Penguin's face. Her suspicion grew, and she asked in a serious tone, "Big bro, you have been acting strange since yesterday. Is something bothering you?" Saito looked away and replied, "Nothing is bothering me." But Shisei answered, "You are bothered, big brother. Because your forehead wrinkles when you are bothered by something." In an uneasy situation, Saito brushed his head as he couldn't hide it any longer, and said his old man has made things difficult for him with his choices. If he wanted to take over the company, then he had to do what his old man wished for him. Hearing his tale, Shisei expressed that the old man surely knows how to go overboard. Saito can't help but agree with her. Looking at him, she asked in a cheerful tone, "Do you wish to be free, or do you want to inherit the company?" Saito looked away for a moment and said, "If possible, I want both." Looking at him, Shisei leaned closer and placed her finger on his lips like a charming lady. By silencing him, she replied, "You are being greedy, brother." She stood up and said, "Nothing is free in life, and the world is governed by the rules. Even ourselves are bound by the rules, and instead of running away from rules, why not use them in your advantage?" Saito thought for a moment and said, "Should I take over the company or not?" Shisei's eyes lit up. She replied, "It's fine if you don't, as she would take care of him. Even if you hit rock bottom and became a homeless man." Saito said, "Please stop joking around." She pressed further, and expressed she knew how hard he is trying to take over his old man's company. Hearing her words of encouragement, Saito thanked her. At last, the day of their fate started. In class, the teacher handed the career forms to students to decide about their future. Akane looked at the career form and thought about her future. While glancing outside the window, Saito thought, it's time to choose between his freedom or his future. School ended. Saito and Akane walked out. With each step, the final hour of the clock ticks, bringing their fate closer to them. The driver stands close to the car and waits to deliver them to their fated destination. Both of them sat in the car, with the confidence to face their fate. They entered in the Saito old man's residence, where old folks were dying in wait to hear their answer. The old man's laughed in an energetic tone and asked, "Which path would you choose, the path of a fool, or the path of a wise?" The time finally came. Saito and Akane spoke together at the same time, and decided to get married to each other. Hearing her answer, Saito looked at her in surprise and asked, "Are you sure about it?" Akane replied in anger, "What other choice do I have? And don't take it to your head that I like you." Watching them, the old folks shed tears of happiness and relief, congratulating them on their marriage. Saito and Akane stood up to leave, by replying to old folks that they would proceed with the marriage registry and ceremony after college graduation. The old man looked at them in surprise and asked, "What are you babbling about?" Both of them looked him in question. To their surprise, the old man expressed in a cheerful tone, "Regarding the marriage ritual, they are going to do it right now." Little later, Saito and Akane stepped out of the car in front of a house. Their face became astonished by looking at the house with beautiful features and scenery that every couple carved to get. Looking at them stunned, the old man said they had already prepared this nest for the unprepared lovebirds as a gift of their marriage. The old folks' extravagant gift left them astonished and stunned. Deep down, Akane's emotional turmoil peaked in frustration just thinking about the skip phases that lovers have with each other. With teary eyes and a flustered face, Akane warned Saito in a trembling voice that she wouldn't forgive him if he thought about doing something pervy with her. But Saito was already passed out by the vast progress of events and the situation that he is being tied with Akane. Looking at them stunned, the old folks know about their hectic schedule as students and register their marriage form instead of them. They went in and showed them every single corner of their love nest, leaving no stone unturned. Ending their showcasing of the house, they waved goodbye, leaving them alone with each other, and went away. Akane collapsed on her knees begging her grandma not to leave her behind. Saito, face covered with sweat, making him stunned in thinking that he had to live with her now. After the old folks were gone, they went into the house. Akane shivered in fear and said in a shaking voice, "You're going to do it, aren't you?" In a surprise, Saito asked, "What are you talking about?" Akane burst into tears, saying in a trembling voice that you are planning to quench your lust right by using her. In shock, he asked, "Just what are you babbling about?" A vivid image flooded her mind, turning her cheeks red. She said in a quivering voice, "Don't play dumb. I'm talking about the erotic stuff." Hearing her, Saito became stunned in surprise. To protect her innocence, Akane brandished her pencil like a knife, her pointed ears twitching like a frightened cat ready to lash out. As she wouldn't go down without a fight, Saito drenched in sweat in this uneasy situation. He said, "Take it easy, I'm not a guy who does that stuff so aggressively." Hearing his answer, Akane froze for a moment and ran away, leaving him stunned. After she left, Saito lay down close at the door and sighed, thinking that, can he really make it with her? Little later, he moved closer towards the stuff that his grandpa left for him, and took it into his room. Finally being done with the stuff, Saito sat down in the chair and opened the pizza box that his old man left for him, saying its prayer before eating. He took the first bite of the pizza and noticed Akane's drooled face. Her stomach growled when she watched Saito eating the pizza. Saito moved forward his hand with the pizza box and asked her, "Wanna grab a bite?" Even in her hunger, she replied, "Don't think I'm going to act up all lovely-dovely with you because of that pizza slice." He replied she didn't need to do it. Akane expressed her worry and said, "You are going to wolf down on her, aren't you?" In shock, he replied that he isn't going to do any of that. Saito once again offered her pizza. Akane's eyes spark up. Hunger and starvation make her act like a stray cat. She lunges toward pizza, grab it, and left like a lightning, leaving him shocked by her behavior. The night arrived. Saito went into the bedroom and found it empty as Akane wasn't there. He thought perhaps she intended to sleep in her study room, and he wished to do the same thing if it was possible. But his old man permitted them to sleep together on the same bed as it is an important condition for marriage. Saito moved closer and checked his bed to find any hidden camera and weight sensor that they secretly implanted in their bed. Although they didn't implant any of them, Saito was irritated by looking at the yes sign on both sides of his pillow. In anger, he tore off and threw the yes sign in the bin, and thought to kick his old man out of the company once he successfully took over it. Sometime later, he calmed down and sighed, lying down on his bed thinking that today was wild as a lot of things happened to him. Meanwhile, in the bathtub, Akane was still in disbelief by the surprising events that happened to her. She stood up and went closer to the bedroom, thinking that things would never go like this in her life. On reaching closer, she found Saito in the bedroom. Finding him asleep, she entered the room saying, "Pardon the interruption." Hearing her voice, Saito's eyes wide opened as he looked at him in flustredness. Watching her so close with her red face, he expressed, "This bed is small, isn't it? And I think they bought this size on purpose." Akane crawled and lay down near him, on the opposite side of the bed. Gazing at her, Saito noticed a sweet fragrance in the room. His nose followed the smell, directing him towards Akane as it was the scent of her shampoo. To get over her fragrance, Saito turned on the other side of the bed. Their backs made contact with each other. Before anything happened, she spoke in a soft voice that, "Don't even think about doing pervy stuff with her." He said okay, but Akane was not okay with this setup. After a little while of being flustered, she spoke in a shaking voice, "I never had a boyfriend and I'm inexperienced in love." Akane's sweet voice and her shampoo fragrance set Saito's heart on fire, short-circuiting his brain into an uneasy situation. To keep himself calmed down in this tense atmosphere was a very big deal for him. Even though his mind perceives Akane beautiful and his mortal enemy, his emotions and body don't understand that. After getting hung on himself, Saito expresses that she didn't have to worry about it, besides he is still a virgin. Akane laughed and said then it won't be a problem for both of them. Lying down with each other, their backs made contact. Saito felt the warmth of Akane's body. Unknown feelings bloom in him, making it impossible for him to sleep. They suddenly hear a gulp of a water bottle, which freaks them out, making it impossible for them to sleep. Time passed and a little later the clock struck 1 a.m. at night. Finding it impossible to sleep, Saito asked why did she choose to marry him. Akane replied she couldn't tell him her reason for marrying him, but in any case, she was obligated to marry him, and the same goes for him, even though it's a mere formality between them to please their old folks. By not letting their suspicion grow on them, Saito can't help but sigh and agree with him. Akane expressed that she would do anything to make her dream come true. Hearing her words, Saito looked at him, thinking that she is just like him. While looking at her, he asked what they would do if their old folks added conditions like having kids. Hearing him, Akane got captured off guard and suddenly turned over to answer him what they would do in that situation. Before saying anything, Akane felt something touched her. On zooming close like a sniper, she saw it was Saito's hand touching her butt, which angered her. She grabbed his fingers to break them apart, saying, "You are going to regret touching my butt." Saito shouted that it was not his fault, the bed is too cramped. On that night he screamed in pain. The very next day at school, Akane was still mad at him for last night's accident, even though Saito was still feeling pain in her fingers and promised him that he is not going to tell anyone about their marriage. Before they went into the class, Akane pointed at him and said one more thing, never bring up their marriage in school. Saito replied, "Aren't you the one who brought it up?" Hearing him, she became flustered and said, "Well, yes, but I want you to be more careful from this point on." After he finished talking with Akane, Saito slid open the class door and went in. As he moved and sat down on his seat, he noticed Shisei standing behind him. Before he could say good morning to her, she moved closer, grabbed and smelled his shirt. After done smelling him, she asked, "Your shampoo smell is different today. Last night where were you?" Her question threw him off guard. To convince her, he said, "Daddy brought me a new shampoo, that's why I smell different today." Looking at his sweated face, her doubt grew more. She continued to sniff him. Her nose caught the whiff of another girl from his body. To confirm her suspicion, she bit at his neck like a vampire, making him scream out in fear. After being done with her inspection, Shisei looked at him and asked, "Big bro, you got married right, aren't you?" Which made him covered up in sweat.